What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of B is for Build. In this episode, we are at my mom's beautiful house place thing, property out in Silverton, Oregon, and the car is broken down here and we're gonna unbreak it down. We're gonna replace the radiator, the cooling fans, remove the front impact bar. We're gonna figure out what we need to do to keep this car a little bit cooler and try and get it back to Portland. And I don't know what else we're gonna do, but it's gonna be a lot of cool stuff. Get it? Stay tuned. Alright, first thing that we're going to need to do is remove the front bumper, the stock radiator, front impact bar, intercooler. We're going to really do a front end tear down so we can make room for our new radiator and figure out where it's going to live.
Yeah, we said we let it go.
Okay, we've got everything completely broken down. Intercooler's off. We're all the way down to the guts. So the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to grab our new radiator and let me bring it over here and I'll show you what we got. So this is our new radiator. It's a big old Griffin dual pass radiator. So instead of having a hose on one on each side, it's actually got both on the same side. What it makes is so the water has to come down and go through a pass around here, and then it can go over and do a pass through there. So it's a more efficient radiator, and it's more efficient. So that's why I went with this one. It is also better because it has to make that pass through the top. We can get efficient cooling with a little bit less space when we go into the top. Now the issue with this, well, not really an issue, is just this is obviously not a BRZ radiator, so we got to fit this and the new fans that we got in front of the intercooler and in front of the engine. Well, behind the intercooler, in front of the engine. I'm confident we'll be able to do it, but I'm gonna have to figure out a way to mount this up. So it's time to do a little bit of kind of planning, and then we'll follow that up with a little bit of fabrication probably. So right now I'm just going to figure out how this is going to live in here. It's interesting that it doesn't have like little tabs either, so we're going to have to get creative. We're going to figure out how this is going to live in the car, and the fans are going to attach to it.
We settled for the last. Couldn't let you want it though. Who am I to let you down?
It is dark. All right, we're gonna wrap up for tonight. This is what we got done so far. Took a piece of angle iron and built the lower shelf for the radiator. This is the one piece of it. We're gonna build it. We're gonna come out a little bit more, and we're gonna build another piece. So you'll have a full U shape holding the radiator from the base. What we did here is we also cut the back out, and that is so the fan can actually slide through it. So the radiator will stop at that thing. The fan will slide back even more. This fan is a 4000 CFM fan. I bought two of them, but they don't fit because I measured from the outside of the radiator instead of the inside little bit, which I should have measured, so don't make that mistake at home. So we're going to run with one fan, but it is 4000 CFM, so it's plenty good. Also, it's nice because we won't draw as much power off of our alternator. So we're good to go there. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to go to the auto parts store and look for an S-shaped hose like this, because this one obviously has the cap on it, and the radiator has its own cap section over there. I don't want to run two because that would look goofy, although I don't think it would cause us any problems. So that's it for tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. We'll see what we can find out at the auto parts store. Good morning. All right, shopping was a success. I got everything that I needed to complete this project, at least I think so. And the first thing I want to do this morning is we're going to go ahead and jack up the front of the car, get a good tilt on it. That's going to help us with refilling the cooling system, but also it's going to give me access to jump under there, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the thermostat off. Here is our thermostat. I just pulled it out of the car and went inside and boiled it in a pot of water to verify that it is working. But when it opens up, this piece slides down here a little bit and allows the water to go through, but it's still a bit restrictive. And I don't really see, especially since I don't even have a heater in the car, I don't see any reason that I would want that restriction. So I think I'm going to go ahead and modify this to not have the inside guts anymore. This outside piece you have to have. You can't just run without a thermostat because this acts as a gasket to hold the radiator hookup on there. So we need this outside piece. So what I think I'm going to do is give it a chop right here and here and hope I can just slide the guts out of this. Then it'll be a full open thermostat and we will have 0 restrictions. The engine will heat up to operating temperature a little bit more slowly, but I'm not too worried about that. There we go. That's our de-restricted thermostat, what's left of it. And this is the neck that it goes into, so just place it in there like that. And there we go. All the water will be free to flow right through there from the get-go. Things are shaping up. The thermostat is back in. The lower radiator hose is attached to the engine block, runs down, and it's loosely attached to the radiator. So that's a pretty good first step there. I wanted to kind of show you guys, this is the difference in space, where before the fan shroud was literally touching, well, it was a 1/4 inch away from touching the AC compressor. So this is the added space that I was talking about. I wanted to get this in here so we could hopefully flow a little bit more air away from that engine when the fan does its job. If you guys remember, just a couple minutes ago I said I was going to find a new one of these, and then I talked to my buddy Kyle. He's essentially running the identical setup. He's the one that tipped me off on all this stuff, like the radiator that I could get and the bottom hose and all that stuff. And we were talking, I was like, yeah, this gets really blocked. So when this thing is fully installed, this is going to be very, very blocked. So I'm actually going to run dual, because the higher filler neck will actually be good to help me fill the engine all the way up, get less air bubbles and stuff like that. Now this is a 1.3 bar cap, so this essentially won't overflow because this cap will go first, which is a lower PSI cap. So this is what's going to be, this will be hooked up to our overflow tank, and that'll be the cap that where if the system does overflow, it'll overflow from there. So yeah, I'm going to run dual cap. So this is coming off a little bit too far, so we're going to have to trim this down a little bit, which won't be hard at all. But before we go ahead and do that, I'm going to finish building the mounting bracket for this radiator. So you can see it's sitting right here now on this shelf right here, and then we're going to come out a little bit with some angle iron, and then I'm going to build a front piece that runs along the front of that as well. And then what you can do is, this is just aluminum right here. We can drill holes in the front piece of angle iron that's going to cover this, and drill a hole in there, and we can literally screw down the radiator if we want with some speed nuts and things like that to help make sure it's like ultra fastened. I should test fit the headlights, but honestly, if they don't fit, they're never going to fit, so whatever. But I'm going to build that bracket first. We're just tack welding everything in place, so I'll build the bracket and then we'll do some test fitting and make sure everything's all graded. Just wrapped up the front tray for the radiator, so you can see that box section is exactly where the radiator sits in there, and it's all welded up and nice and super heavy duty. So the next thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is come in with the flap wheel and clean everything up as best I can, and then we're going to give it a nice coat of paint, and that's going to prevent it from rusting and getting a lot of corrosion around there. And then we will figure out what's next. I think I'm going to build new ones of these, because this gets the intercooler close to where I want it, but it's coming up about a 1/4 inch short, 1/2 inch short. So I think I'm going to build 2 new ones of those, and then I'd like to start getting stuff mounted up. There's the finished product for the shelf and our new extended intercooler bottom mounts. So that's all looking great. And the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and fit the high flow fan right there on our radiator right there and get that all tuned up. We're going to use some radiator taping around there too to make sure it's all nice and airtight. And then we will we'll be in a good spot to place the radiator, do the final placement for the radiator.
If you let me walk away, maybe then we'd lose.
Okie dokie, got the radiator mounted up and bottom hose is connected. This is like, oh, and we got the fan on the back, obviously. This is the final resting place of the radiator. We used this aluminum ducting tape to get a good, like that whole square right there is all just like sealed up to the fan, and it can come forward a little bit, but it can't go backwards anymore because that's where it kind of hits. So once we attach our upper hose right there, that'll hold it in place pretty nicely. It is at more of a forward angle than I expected, and that's because the fan is hitting this cross port right here, and I didn't want to do like a delete on that if we don't have to, which I don't think we do. So that might mean though that we're going to go back to the other hangers for the intercooler, because that will lean the intercooler forward a little bit more. We'll figure that out in a second when we get to the intercooler land. For now, it's time to go ahead and pull off this top radiator hose, and we need to, you can see right here that we're a little bit too far this way, so we're going to have to trim it, build a bead on the end of that so it'll stay on there, and then go ahead and attach the upper radiator hose. Things are moving right along. I got the radiator mounted up permanently, got the upper hose. I trimmed this down, ran new hose right here actually going into it. So we got the upper like S-pipe installed. Got a little bit more room here in front of the valve cover as well, and made sure there's enough room in front of those belts. So we're all good to go now. That's that. Next thing I'm going to do is grab the air compressor, pull out my pressure tester, and pressure test, pull vacuum on this whole system, make sure it's holding pressure and everything's looking good before we go to fill it. For some reason the vacuum test basically didn't work at all. I don't know if maybe it can't do anything with a completely empty system. So or there's like a huge leak in this thing that I'm not noticing. So what I've done is I've got the jack under here. I've jacked up the car even higher. So we're trying to tilt the engine to help reduce the chance of an air bubble getting stuck back there. And I'm just going to go ahead and start filling it up and see how it does. Aha! Found out the problem. Why we weren't able to pull and hold any vacuum is because this is the wrong cap for the radiator. The radiator didn't come with a cap, so I tried to get the best one I could yesterday, but this is either not large enough or doesn't have enough depth. So I'm off to the auto parts store. I'm going to try and find the right one, and fingers crossed they have it. Alright, well this is the point where I realized that pulling vacuum on a radiator cap is not the same as testing a system without another radiator cap on it. So we have two radiator caps, so obviously the other one is letting in pressure because they're not built to withstand a bunch of vacuum. That's why you put the vacuum tester in the radiator cap hole. So now that I have a system with two radiator caps, I either have to block one off and then do the pressure test, or yeah, that's the only way to do it. So I did that. I blocked one off, did the vacuum test. We're doing all right. And now it's time to continue, but it is too late at night. It's going to get dark any minute now. So this is the longest radiator install ever, but I'll be back early tomorrow morning and we'll get this whole thing buttoned up and take it for a test drive. All right, I'm back. It's day 3. Go time for the longest radiator install in the history of this BRZ. I was sitting there last night just thinking like, why did I waste so much time going back and forth looking for radiator caps? That was such a silly mistake I made last night. But let's get it done now. I'm just gonna go ahead and bust everything out, wrap it all up. We're filling it up with fluid, reinstalling the intercooler, zip tying a bunch of stuff down. Let's get it all buttoned up and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, things are getting really close. We got everything like bolted back up and mounted back up. Now there's only one little problem. Well, one problem was the battery is dead. We got the battery recharged. Second problem is that the heater hoses right behind me, right here, they're trapping air. And that could have been theoretically the problem the whole time. I figure that the water pump would have pushed that air bubble out as we were driving around and stuff like that. But they are definitely trapping air. Even with the car at maximum tilt, this thing is lower than over there, so we just can't really get all the air out of it. So I went and bought one of these guys, and this is out of just a little like flush and fill kit for a radiator, and it's actually meant to be connected to your heater core hoses. So this will go in between, and then it has a screw off cap that can hold all the pressure of the radiator and everything like that. So what I'll do is I'll attach this to both sides and then fill the radiator system up so it's all full, and then I'll just top it off in here and put the cap back on, and we'll have a fully full radiator system. So I'm gonna go ahead and install that right now, top it off, and then we're ready to do the first startup. We got the car started, it all sounds great. A couple small issues though. The intercooler is way too low. We're gonna have to somehow raise that up a little bit. Now that the car is like actually back on the ground, it's clearly way too low. Also, our fan is not on, because if I turn on the fan when the car starts, like when if I start the car by hitting the first button, which turns on all my auxiliaries, that saps so much power away that when I hit the start button, the car won't start. So I'm gonna have to figure out some solution for that. That's why most fans don't run until your car is actually driving and hot. So I'm gonna have to figure out a solution for that right now. Problem number one is solved. We got a bigger relay in there, upgraded the fuse back there, and now we can start the fan and then start the car. And boy, is it a good fan. You can just, it's pulling so much air from right here. It's great. It's really, really good. I'm very excited about that. I got high hopes for that working. I wonder if I can do this. Hang on. Yeah, it's good. So next step, I gotta get that intercooler up much higher. Alright, we are ready to test. I mounted the intercooler up a little bit higher by loosening the bottom brackets, changing up the hosing a little bit, and then you saw me use some plumber's tape to connect to those hangers there. That is a temporary thing until we build the front bash bar, which will go around there, and then, you know, then it will actually bolt into the front bash bar mounting bracket. So in the interim time, we just got some plumber's tape to hold it there and make it nice and sturdy. Fans fixed, so everything's fixed. Coolant system's topped up. It's time to take it for a drive. Alright, the car's running. Fans on, sounds great, everything sounds great. The only problem is we're really running out of gas. Now this is a weird thing, but we might not even be able to get gas, so I'm gonna head into the city and try and get gas. The North American eclipse is happening tomorrow, so there's so many more people in town that a lot of gas stations are running out of gas. I know this one in town is out of regular gas, but hopefully they'll have premium. Gas is a success, did not overheat getting gas. Now let's see if we can get a cheeseburger without overheating. Well, that took forever, but we did not overheat. So now I'm gonna eat my dinner with the engine on, and then it's time to rip through the countryside. Everything was looking so good, it drove so perfectly until we got it back and let it idle for a little bit, and then it exploded. And now we're getting water coming out from the middle area here, so we have to tear the whole thing apart again. Wow, more radiator problems, who would have thought? Well, I can't quite pull the radiator right now because the hoses have to stay on it because it's boiling, but we can see that it's basically bleeding right out of the center, which is a very, very bad sign. Most likely killed the radiator already. Way to go, Team Chris. So here's the deal, guys. I was driving around the countryside. Everything was exactly perfect. The cooling system was working exactly perfectly. It would go up under extreme stress, but it didn't even go very high at all. 176 was the top score I ever got. And then as soon as I'd let off driving full throttle, boom, coolant came back down. Everything was happy-go-lucky. So at that point, I decided to pull it back in here and just let it idle and see how it did at idle after a really, really hard drive, because the hard drive was completely fine. And then I was gonna go do burnouts. That was like my goal. Then I come back, there's a huge pile of water right here. We start diagnosing, we start hunting things down, and this is the unfortunate outcome. This right here is exactly where the center of that fan was. So this guy right here punched a hole in my $305 radiator. RIP radiator. Can't believe I screwed this up. All right, well, I would really like to blame somebody else for this one, but I found out why it's my fault. Great. If we take a straight edge across this shroud right here, going from the backside to here, and I cross it over, you can just barely see that it does clear this by a fraction of a millimeter. Well, remember when I said I bought 2 fans earlier and they didn't both fit on this? So I used one and I put a cardboard kind of stint in the other side. And because it was such a close fraction of a millimeter that if you run, let me straighten out my straight edge, that if you run from my like piece of cardboard and you run over, you're gonna make contact. Just barely. And that's why I was able to drive around so successfully for so long. It took a while for this thing to drill a hole in the radiator, but it did make contact. So it's not the fan brand's fault, which I haven't even told you guys anyways, or maybe I did anyways. It's not their fault. It's my fault. That is a very, very little clearance, but it's my fault. So $300, almost $300. Time to order more stuff. All right, guys, well, I am really sorry to have 2 episodes that fail in the end. I hope you could tell that I worked really hard on this over the last few days, and I could tell you that when it was running and there wasn't a hole in the radiator, that this worked very, very, very well. So I'm extremely bummed that, I mean, I made literally a 1 millimeter mistake that is gonna completely set the build back a couple more days. So, sorry, but I have to special order parts once again, and like I mentioned, there's that eclipse thing that's probably going to block a lot of stuff, so I will get this stuff as soon as I can. Until then, I'm really sorry, but the car is trapped in my mom's house, so I can't keep working on it. So so I'll get parts here as soon as I can, and we'll get back on this, and it should just be a quick button up. The strategy that I'm going to do is I'm going to order the fan for the right size of the radiator, so I'm going to get a new fan, and I'm going to get a new radiator. In the meantime, Eric is going to take that radiator, and he's going to try and repair it, because it is a really small hole on one vein just on the surface, so it looks repairable, and that'll save us the $300 radiator and the fans, and then we'll reuse those on the Aston Martin, because if you remember, those don't have a fan or a radiator. This is both really good quality products. It brought our temps down from when we were driving around hard at 205 degrees down to 176 degrees was the max I could possibly get it to. And then what we're seeing that was a difference this time is when I would just the first time I'd just get out of boost and just like coast down a hill or something like that, temperatures would rapidly start falling back down to like 170 degrees or something like that, which is a good operating temperature for this motor. So in the winter also, we're going to need to add a real thermostat in there, because adding all this cooling stuff is going to keep the engine very cool. So summer we'll run no thermostat, winter we'll throw a thermostat in there. It's a very easy swap to throw that back in there. So again, I apologize that this episode is ending with fail. You guys probably know that if I could have made that happen any other way, that's not how it would go down, but that's how it went down this time. Thank you guys all so much for the support. If you want to help out and support, you like BS for Build and you like what I'm trying to do here, head over to bsforbuild.com, scroll down to the shop, pick up any of the merchandise there, and all the proceeds go to these builds and helping us get through this type of stuff. If you want to find us at more places, we are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, all that stuff. We're just BS for Build on every social media outlet, so pick your favorite one and find us on there. And we will be back in a couple days with a new radiator, new fan, all new goodness. Thanks for watching, guys. Please remember to like and subscribe. Peace! I got peace blocks. Peace. Come on.